Let me show these suckers how to ball out here. Oh, man, let's get this together here. Oh, layup. Oh, shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh, my goodness, I can't buy a bucket out here. I missed the whole damn basket. Oh, my goodness, what's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Trees. I'm taking on three of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh, my goodness, behind the back. Layup. Oh, did he just do a reverse? He is in beast mode out here. I ain't got to look. It's falling. Oh, my goodness. This guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media again. Right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.
Saturday. Woo!
I'm not gonna lie, you know, Air Doctor's little commercial be making me want to buy a Black Power Media shirt.
It need to. He put in some work. I don't know about that. I don't know about how that jump shot looks, but I'm not co-signing the jump shot. But
it's cool though. It's a nice little. I know.
We really need to do a better. We need to just be sending stuff to folks that are regular contributors and like the super remixers and stuff like that. We should have some swag giveaways, but Kamau was stingy. Kamau is stingy.
Kamau could have just sent everybody the shirts he don't wear, and then everybody else. And then everybody else would have a shirt. Although he was wearing one the other day, wasn't he? Did I spot him?
He might have been wearing one at some point. You know what I mean? This dude might slide up into, But anyway, shout out to you, Renee. Shout out to all the remixers who are, I'm sure, joining us live. Though we are not live, just FYI, I don't want to cause any confusion. I am currently in Montreal paneling or getting ready to panel with Dr. Orasami Burton and Daruba Ben Wahad and Robin Kelly and Ruth Wilson Gilmore and Sarah Haley. You know what I mean? So, and I think I had dinner last night with Ori and Daruba and maybe Joy James. So it might have been
big time.
Yeah.
That's big time.
But we are yet here in anyway doing Saturdays.
Yes. We wanted to make sure we brought the people, we didn't want to disrupt the flow. We got this Saturday thing going.
Yeah, let's keep it going. But we got to make sure we're out of the way for Warrior class. So yes. I don't want no drama. I cleared up all the drama with Baba and Belay before. I don't want no more. So how would you like to get us started? Where do you want to go first?
Why don't we do Eric Adams first? Just
okay.
And actually on the run sheet,
breaking
when
news.
I got it, I was like, oof.
This is some wild. The hip hop mayor said KRS.
Hip hop mayor.
FBI raids home of Eric Adams' fundraising chief. Mr. Adams abruptly canceled several meetings in Washington, D.C. to return to New York as FBI agents raided the home of the fundraiser, Brianna Suggs. Whoa. I don't know anything about this. Agents.
And I read it real quick. So, who knows what actually is going to come out of this, but it seems like Ms. Suggs has been making a whole lot of money since he started running for mayor. And, they raided the house. Mr. Adams was on his way to DC to meet, I assume, about, this fake concern for migrating persons who are in New York. And he had to hop back on the plane and come back to New York and reschedule all his DC meetings.
Oh, so this says the early morning raid was part of a broad public corruption investigation by the FBI and federal prosecutors in Manhattan into whether Mr. Adams' 2021 mayoral campaign conspired with a Brooklyn construction company and the Turkish government to funnel foreign money into the campaign's coffers, apparently through a straw donor scheme, according to portions of the search warrant obtained by the New York Times. The warrant sought evidence of theft of federal funds and conspiracy to steal federal funds, wire fraud, and wire fraud conspiracy, as well as campaign contributions by foreign nationals and conspiracy to make such contributions. Good Lord, the hip-hop mayor. KRS, what you got
laugh.
to say now?
I shouldn't laugh, Lord. I should not laugh.
But why? So they're saying Suggs was the ringleader, or the evidence just stops at her doorstep so far?
I guess all the evidence that they were searching for at that time was with her. It's not super clear if they think that Mayor Adams is actually involved in the scheme, but obviously, I mean, look, we all know I'm no fan of Mayor Adams, so you know, you never know what's going to come out of this. But I was blown away when I saw this headline, and I read through it real quick, and I was like, oh, we're going to have to touch this one. I don't think we can not touch this one.
The construction company was identified in the warrant as KSK Construction Group in Brooklyn. Individuals listed their employers. KSK donated nearly $14,000 to Mr. Adams' 2021 campaign. Wow. Yo.
Wild.
16 felony charges went out to Alvin Bragg, Mr. Adams' former building commissioner and senior advisor. Was indicted in September. Eric Ehrlich, Mr. Adams' former buildings commissioner and senior advisor, was indicted by the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg on 16 felony charges, including counts of conspiracy and bribe taking. Mr. Ulrich, as well as 3 others indicted at the time, helped organize a 2021 fundraiser for Mr. Adams. I don't know, Mr. Adams.
It's not pretty.
Mr. Adams' re-election campaign has paid Ms. Suggs nearly $100,000 in the last 2 years for fundraising and campaign consulting via her company, Suggs Solutions. So that would be why they targeted her.
Right.
Okay, the first mayoral campaign, his first one, paid her more than $50,000. She's a registered lobbyist.
He would be running for re-election in the next one, right?
Yeah, and we basically know that for a professional politician, as soon as you get elected, you have to start fundraising, which is one of the reasons why we don't ever see them do much for anybody.
Right.
But okay, well, you know, I hate to say it, that sounds a little hip hop-ish. It's a little shady. That's messed up. That's messed up to the hip hop mayor. But
yeah, I got nothing.
It's hard. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, I don't know anything beyond this other than it just seems consistent with his approach to governance and the mainstream sort of ordering of things. It stereotypically seems very New York. This kind of hustle, right? This kind of political, it's a stereotypical New Yorker thing. I mean, no disrespect. Maybe all mayors, you know. I mean, it seems like I don't know. It's just, but it does, right? It seems like something you see on Law and Order and all these movies I grew up watching. You know, some shady mayor in New York.
I feel like it's everywhere though, because there's all that stuff going on in Atlanta too, and we got some shady stuff in Newark. I mean, it's everywhere. It's wild. These politicians be wilding, man. I don't know. I don't know.
But by the way, you know, I did go back and watch. You mentioned the mayor of Newark. I did after we got, you know, because I got some pushback from one of our episodes a couple weeks ago, and I did go back and look at one of the things that Ras Baraka. He had come out shortly after some of the protests against his administration a couple weeks ago, and gave one of those. I didn't prepare us to look at it, but it just was a stereotypically Democratic Party mayoral sort of presentation. It was very, my father was a legend. I did all this work coming up behind him, but I am mayor. And it didn't quite say the you know, I'm just a Democratic, you know, I'm not an activist anymore, whatever. But it was basically, chastising those on his left for criticizing him as being immature. It was that same kind of, once you go left of me, now you're into immaturity, and the things that my father and his people did aren't necessarily the tactics of today. That's not the way we're going to get it done. This, that, and the third. It just sounded very, it reminded me of the debate I had with his father around supporting Obama. It was giving a lot of that kind of, you need to grow up.
Democratic vibe.
And that you need to grow up.
No matter who. Right.
And like his father said to us in that debate, basically you're political children and immature. I mean, it was that kind of, so.
And he's been very both sidesy on the Palestine-Israel issue. You know, there was an article about when the protests started, him basically saying, like, you know, let's not use this war as a reason to create hate. And I was like, one, it's not a war, and two, protesting does not create hate. So, but it was very, you know, we have to think of all the people. So, yeah.
For sure. All the people, all the time.
All the people, all the time. So speaking of dirty politicians.
Sure.
So was it our first Saturday that I talked about George Santos? Or was it the first Saturday?
I think it was the first and the second. It was like a couple of them because and then I just started paying attention to this character after you mentioned, because I was wildly just not paying attention.
Right. I mean,
and
he's a whole mess. And so the accusations and the problems have continued to pile up. There was actually a vote to expel him yesterday, which did not work because, you know, why would we expel the congressperson who's, you know, being charged with his voters? I mean,
wait, say that again. Hold on again. I think you broke up there for a second. You said he was charged with what?
Stealing money from the voters. He was stealing credit card numbers and stealing money from people who donated to his campaign. Yes, so there's all this extra. So I sent you two things. One was like the follow-up to his current situation with court, and the second one was about this vote that happened yesterday. Which
this is on the run sheet? How come
it is? So it's on the line, and this is where I'm with the Jamal Bowman stuff.
Okay.
Right, because I'd
I'd
like for our audience to take note of how wildly different these two Congress people are being treated for quote unquote criminal activities, right? So young George has pled not guilty to I think it's like 23 charges now that he's been indicted with.
And who was he just screaming on about Israel? Where is it? Was it? I think it was anti-Zionist Jewish protesters in front of his office, and he just came out and did like a photo stunt. And you will not. You have to stand with Israel, and we will not tolerate.
I can't even take him seriously. Like I can't. Like even looking at this picture of him, I can't even take him seriously. And I just, for the life of me, cannot understand what's going on right now with all of the criminal charges that he is facing. That he went in, pled guilty, left. No problems, nobody's worrying about nothing. He's not going to trial until next fall. It's like September of 2024 is the date that he's slotted to go to trial.
Oh, wow.
And there are all these things swirling around him. So the Republicans out of New York got together to try and expel him from Congress because, this is embarrassing. He got all this scandal and stuff floating around behind him. And
stealing people's identities and making charges on his own donors' credit cards without their authorization.
Like, you can't make this stuff up, man. You cannot make this stuff up. It's wild. It's wild.
But you're saying, but apparently he pled not guilty, and the attempt to get rid of him failed.
Did not work. So there was a vote yesterday. It failed to expel him.
Oh, wait, he had concocted a Jewish heritage that turned out to be untrue?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I think it was his grandparents one of his grandparents was supposedly. I mean, the whole situation is just so messy. It really is just so messy. And so they brought it to Congress to vote to expel him based on all these things. And essentially what happened is, they got together and said, well, he's only been charged. We don't know what's going to happen with the trial. And you really have to wonder what is going on, right? That this is acceptable for someone to maintain their Congress seat while all of this is swirling around them. And then let's go to young Bowman.
Wait, but I wanted to just quickly, because you had the other link in here. Did you?
So the other link is about the vote.
Okay.
And why it failed. And essentially it's just, them saying that he didn't, he has to go through his trial, and we don't want to remove people while there's an investigation pending, and it's unfair and all. And all I could think to myself is, what is it, like 30% of incarcerated population of people who are waiting to go to trial? Right? Like, it's hundreds of thousands of people who are waiting to go to trial. Meanwhile, he's allowed to just maintain his seat. We're just going to let it ride until his trial happens next year. And in the meanwhile, I mean, I realize that it's alleged until the trial is over, but who knows what's going to happen between now and then to his voters, right? To the people who he still has access to, to all their information if they gave a donation. Like, that's wild to me. So let's counter this now with Jamal Bowman, who apparently went out the wrong door before a vote, set off the fire alarm, got had to
go. So he pleads guilty to falsely pulling,
and is on probation. He got 3 months probation and had to pay a fine because he opened a fire. He pushed some button and it caused the fire alarms to go off, and the Republicans came for him.
So $1,000 fine and a 3-month probation, after which a false fire alarm charge is expected to be dismissed from his record under an agreement with prosecutors. Wow, thanks. Congressman Bowman was treated like anyone else who violates the law in the District of Columbia, a spokesperson for the Attorney General of the District of Columbia said in a statement on Wednesday. Based on the evidence presented by Capitol Police, we charged the only crime that we have jurisdiction to prosecute. Wow. So he had to appear in D.C. Superior Court on Thursday for his arraignment. Said he would pay the fine and said it was a lapse in judgment. I am responsible for activating a fire alarm. I will be paying the fine issued and look forward to these charges being ultimately dropped, Bowman said in a statement. That's crazy. I mean, but this was absolutely necessary.
Right.
Because he's got to be treated like everybody else.
Like everybody else.
Columbia.
Everybody else. But just him, though, because, George Santos could be charged with fleecing however much money he stole from the voters, allegedly.
It just sounds like another case of, if you don't commit a big enough crime, we're not going to punish you. Right. Like you have to escalate to get away with it.
Right.
If you can do something petty like a fire alarm, you're going to get punished.
Right.
But you start stealing from your donors, maybe not.
Yeah. We'll just ride it out.
Allegedly.
We'll see how it all plays out. We'll see how it all plays out in court. It's wild.
Oh, wow.
When I saw the story, and listen, I'm no Bowman fan, like personally. I don't live in his district. I didn't vote for him, but it's just when I've been doing this thing looking at crime in the cop cities and, who gets punished, right? What's really considered crime? And it's like when you look at these two congressmen and how differently these two things have played out. And when you look at the thing that the Republicans were pushing, they wanted to make sure that he was held responsible for setting off that fire alarm because we got to treat him like everybody else.
Got to be consistent.
Got to be consistent. It's just, you just have to shake your head because it's just, there's no, I can't even voice really how like thrown off when I first read it and understood the differential in how these two people were treated. And,
So I admit I didn't follow up, but when I first saw the headline passingly yesterday, I think I thought I read firearm. So I thought, I don't know what exactly I thought because I didn't even click on the story, even when I thought that was it. So I know I wouldn't have clicked if I had read it properly as fire alarm.
Fire alarm.
Because I thought, okay, so what does that mean? Somebody on his staff pulled a gun in the office or got caught with a gun? And that's what I was thinking. So I was like, I'll come back to it.
Right. And when
this is even more silly.
It's even more silly. And when you read what he explains happened is that he was going to do whatever, he had to get on the floor to do whatever vote they were about to do. And he went to go through a door that is normally unlocked and it was locked. And he pushed the button or whatever panel to open the door and it set the alarm off because it was an emergency exit door. And so, when he explained it, it wasn't even like he intentionally set off the fire alarm to disrupt something. He was trying to get somewhere. And he just, and I can only imagine that in his mind, he was like, oh, whatever, I just got to get through this door, not even thinking that this is going to be the consequence that's going to come and follow behind that action. So it's just.
And when you, and we've all been places where, things are just being gotten away with.
Right.
He's got to have seen some shady stuff happening around there and be like, come on, man.
Right.
After all of this and that and that and this, you're going to come get me for this? It's
for this nonsense.
It's like you're gonna get me for stealing a stapler.
Right. And came
taking a K cup.
Right. And came hard to where he obviously felt like he's just going to have to, kind of ride this out and take.
And hopefully they'll drop the charges, Renee.
Right. Because who knows what'll happen in 3 months. And what these ads are about to be like when it's time for re-election.
You can't vote for someone who misappropriates funds and redirects resources that could be saving the lives of someone who really has an emergency because they pulled a fire alarm and redirected the fire department. Vote for so-and-so and get away from this kind of abuse of authority in Congress.
It's
sponsored
awful.
by the
Republican Party in New York.
The Republican Party in New York. Because that's where, wow. I bet it's going to be true, too. There's going to be some.
Oh, definitely. We're going to have to circle back and see.
Yeah, we're going to have to circle back and see the campaign ads. Yeah.
See if it happens.
It's going to be some wild, when they do dun-dun, they change and put in, go from color to black to white and be like, this guy. Do you know who this guy is for real? Did you know that last year he pulled a fire alarm? He opened a door. Vote for Trump Jr.
It is crazy though.
Wow.
It really is. And when you really look at I mean, just looking at who did what, right? Like looking at the two of them, and like that was the thing that I was like, I got to bring it back because this is too much. So, but this flows well, right? Because that website that Harim shared, that the resource website.
Oh,
which is
right, that from my man Hiram. Yeah, here we go. I got it. Yep.
The reason I asked you to just make sure he'd be okay, because I, of course, was like, let me poke around in this website. And I did like what I thought was going to be a quick, like, let me just check it out and see what's there.
Please.
And fell straight down the rabbit. And you know how I get when you
down the hatch with Renee.
I was like, man, look at all this stuff.
Yeah, Hiram laced
I was
us
like
with
mad
that
at him because I was like, he threw it up there like it wasn't a big thing. There is so much information on this website. And I felt like it was worth going back to it and just really like showing people all the information that they can get. So you have all these reports. You can sort it through depending on what information you're looking for. If you get involved locally, it'll give you the organizations that I guess they just linked with all over the country. If you're interested in finding resources or, doing this type of work. I was really floored by the depth of information that was available on here. So look at that.
CASA, Jews for United Justice. I think I was just at the rally with them. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Right.
This is dope.
And then when I clicked on projects, they're working right now on this is what he was bringing to you, the organized labor and police. And then, of course, I found a whole report on what is crime that I have now like tagged. And that was in part while I was like, I need to reach out to him because I really want to be able to like dig into this and use it because this is what my next thing that I'm writing on. This right here, this Cops Don't Stop Violence.
Whoops.
And it's a full out looking at what's crime and all the stuff that I'm always trying to get people to understand, right? That when people think of policing, when they talk about policing and when they talk about crime, it is always with this really, really vast misunderstanding of what police do, of what crime is, of what actually gets resolved when it comes to follow-up by police, right? And I was amazed by the amount of information that was on that website. And then I was like mad at him because I was like, he just flipped that up there like it wasn't like it was a simple thing.
It's real matter of fact.
Out. Yeah. And it was, there's a lot there. And, I'm like thrilled to have this new resource because now I have somewhere else where when I start falling down my rabbit holes that I can start digging through. But, we might have to bring him on here on a Saturday and talk about some of these research projects.
Hiram has a permanent open invitation. So it's just a matter of whenever he's available. So absolutely.
Yeah. And he's right in Philly. And so, I was floored. And for me, it was well worth like just kind of bringing that back up and showing the people, and he showed this in passing, but
to him, it's not a big deal because he's always on top of everything. But for the rest of us,
you just don't read, beloved.
So we gotta. That's why he drops all this wisdom on us.
It's a lot. It was a lot there. It's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot, and I've never really checked into to that as a resource either. So I'm happy to join the deep dive.
Right, and I was that conversation that you had with him and Daruba, that I was like jaw dropped, like just listening to all the wisdom. Just everything that was just flowing out of that conversation, and really curious. Like, I really want to know how this works, right? Like, can you really file that? Can there really be a class action lawsuit? Is that something that's, like, actually doable, right? How do you find the people who, there's no statute of limitation to murder, right? So could it be any family at all at any time who has been affected by racist police violence or police violence in general, right? Like,
you know what, Renee? Do you see me freezing up? I think I need to refresh again.
I do.
Hold on, let me refresh.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Keep talking to the people. I'll be right back.
So, just curious on my part whether or not this is something that really can be pursued, because I do agree that there has to be some way to break this system from what it is right now. And in all the research that I've been doing with regard to following like all these different things that happen, like the letters to the UN and the different reports that happen, and every time you turn around, there's another story that's being released about something that the police did to somebody in their neighborhood that they're supposedly serving and protecting. And, there seems to be a never ending stream of violence that is coming out of this system that we have all been propagandized to believe is put in place in order to do something beneficial to the community. So, one of the things that I have really been looking at over time is the incarceral state, who's incarcerated, why they're incarcerated, what the punishment is for people. When you look at the DOJ statistics for who is currently in prison, they only track for people who are incarcerated for a year or more. They don't go to the people who get 6 months or 3 months or, probation. That information is a little harder to find. So I've been really doing some work trying to track that information, because I am really curious about this idea of, what is crime and what qualifies as crime in the sense of, what we're propagandized to believe is crime versus what is the actual crime that people need to be concerned about. Something that was said on that show was, when you go into communities where there is actual violence, where there is actual, things happening to community members, carjackings and shootings and things like that within the community, it's very, very difficult to go into those communities and to just talk about why policing isn't necessary, because people are feeling the situation that exists for them in that moment in time in that community. They understand what they're living through. They understand what their fears are, that type of thing. And I recognize that, but it's also true that we have to find a way to get these same community members to kind of take a step back and to understand that whatever situation that they're living in, they're also probably over policed. And there has to be a way to get it, to clarify for these same community members that you're over policed and you still have those same fears, right? You're over policed and it's not stopping the crimes, quote unquote, that are happening in those communities. You look better, you're not freezing anymore.
Does the mic work still?
It's working for me.
Did it sound like it did before? Does it sound, you can't tell if it sounds the same as it did before?
No, it's hard. Because I could only tell when you came back the second time when we tested it earlier. So I don't want to lie to you, and then it turns out that
I just don't. I'm not clear. Does it sound like the second time I showed up or the first time?
I feel like it might actually sound more like the first time.
Okay, I'll come back again.
Not as deep.
All right. That's exactly the difference. Okay.
Poor Jared having issues with his microphone. So one of the reasons that I started digging into this website that, that was provided is because I really want to start working on clearing these issues up for people, like presenting information so that they understand that all of the things that are presented, not all of the things that are presented. I'm trying to teach myself not to speak in extremes. Okay, go ahead, speak. Let's see.
Does this sound different?
It sounds different. Okay. Now that I know what to listen for, yep. Look at that. Okay. Look at that.
I don't know what's going on. All right, where were we, or where were you?
So I was explaining to the people that part of my sincere interest in all of this is really getting people who are within communities who are experiencing the actual crimes, right? So one of the things that was brought up was this idea that if you live in a community where there are actual carjackings, where there are actually murders, where people are getting robbed, you can't just go into that community and start talking about how useless the police are, because people are living in that system where their current community situation and their current material conditions are being affected by those actions, right? So you can't, if you start talking about that, then people, I think, automatically go in their mind to, well, how much worse is it going to get if we don't have police, right? I think that's where the mind goes. And for some reason, people don't really kind of step back and think, well, wait a minute, we're over policed and we're living in this state where these are the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day and on a regular basis. And the police are already an extreme part of this community. They're always here, they're always around, and yet and still we're still suffering, right, with all of these things. So if we can find ways, and one of the things on that website that I was thrilled, I clicked on the Abolition, and there was, it was scroll after scroll after scroll of resources and ways to talk to the community and ways to get people to understand propaganda and all these things. And for me, that is huge, right? Because I feel like that's where the problem really is. The problem really exists in getting people to understand that the things that they think they understand about policing are absolutely untrue. And so,
yeah, right on. I'm just pulling this up here, and if you just click on the filter for abolition, right. In our own hands, tools for talking abolition and transformative justice with little ones, shoplifting, Copaganda. Oh, I got to get into this Copaganda stuff.
Yeah, because it's a problem. It really is a problem. And if when I really stopped to think about all the things that I used to watch where cops were involved, right? And where they're the good guy, or if there's one bad cop, like there's this huge like contradiction and everyone's trying to figure out how to fix the problem with the one bad cop. And there is never a step back to really understand and comprehend the extensive problem that comes with the police state.
Oh man, I froze up again. Oh my goodness. I was trying to pull something up, and all right. So I'll have to restart and come back again. But I don't know what's going on all of a sudden with this being a problem. But I'll be right back again.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm looking to do within my own, my space and y'all know already that me with my rabbit holes and my wild hairs, I'd really like to start like a monthly conversation about abolition and about policing, where either I'm in the room with other people who are seeking to teach community members about Copaganda and what is really coming, what is really the problem with this system. And the problem with the system at its core is that the system was simply not built to do or to be the thing that we have been led by the media and by TV and by movies and by all these things to believe about the system. It is not about protecting people. It is not about making sure that people feel safe in their communities. It's not about public safety. It's not about, allowing people to live in their communities without fear. It is about the protection of property. It is about the protection of people who own property. It is about protection of the corporations. And I don't want to, I need to find a way to utilize all these resources that I now have access to try and have these conversations. And, whenever when I've been doing, the movies, and when I did the Black August teach-in, there have been a number of organizations within New Jersey who have participated in these events with me and who've been very supportive. And I want to find a way to plug in so that we can I don't want to recreate the wheel, right? This resource now exists. And so what I'd really like to do is utilize that resource, as well as my desire to create spreadsheets and fall down rabbit holes to present information to community members and to help other organizations that are interested in really abolishing this system, to find ways to teach those in their community about what's going on. You gonna try and talk so we can see if your mic's working?
Yeah, where are we with that? You, even from the last time, does it sound like I just left? When I just left, you don't?
No, it sounds like it sounds before you leave and come back. Poor Jared, poor Jared, and he didn't want to edit, so I don't know if I don't know if when he looks back at this, he's gonna be like, I need to clip all this stuff out. We just gonna let it ride. So for people in the New Jersey area, if you're interested in tagging along with me as I go on this journey, find me. All right, let's go. Let's see.
What does it sound like now?
I think you're back now. Wait, keep talking.
You should hear it. Should sound wildly different. Like you should hear. That's why I'm confused when you're not. I'm a little confused because it should sound very different.
You're back now.
It should sound, like if it's not working properly, it should sound like I'm unplugged or in a bigger room, or if it doesn't have that, it should be very different. So, and I apologize because I know you don't even have the chat to look at. I don't know what's going on. It's just I don't know what's going on, and I do blame StreamYard because when I try it in OBS, it works.
So what? What's OBS?
Is
that the other platform?
It's the streaming platform. It's the streaming. I use OBS. It's too much. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter. But what I wanted to pull up, because when you talk about Copaganda, one of the first people I think about is this guy here, who just put out a new Matt Alford, whose book on. Well, I've read his work where he applies Chomsky and Herman's approach, propaganda model to media studies to cinema. And he and his colleague Secker wrote a book, National Security Cinema, that I refer to all the time. And they were the co-producers of this Theater of War documentary that I've also done a video or two about on this platform, and talk a lot about Copaganda and why we see so many films and TV shows about police and military, and they do a lot of detailing of and show that literally current and former CIA agents, people working within various other agencies and intelligence agencies, past or present, have been directly involved with creating these shows and these films. And so they play a major. They're meant to play a major role in manipulating how we are as citizens supposed to accept the presence and prevalence of police in the military. And right. Almost always showing that even when they show corrupt cops, they're shown as bad apples. Then the institution itself comes back to correct it. All the little tactics. So I meant to bring up this article earlier. I haven't gotten a chance to really get to it yet, but it's a new article that came out recently where he's interviewed about his work. So, but these resources that you're talking about, I definitely want to get into and see how they're applying that work specifically to, or similar work specifically to, people in struggle and trying to organize it out of existence.
Right. So while you were fighting with your
technology.
Technology is great until it don't work. I was explaining that one of the things that I'm looking to do right now is to start like a monthly abolition education thing, and to try and find organizations who want to get together and find resources to share and bring community people in if you can. And if you can't bring community people in, at least like within your organization, be very, very clear on what the issue is, and to be very clear on how you get people to really understand what the issue is. Because it all really goes back to the same thing, which is, you know, the minute you bring up this idea of abolition, the first thing people ask, and I've now witnessed it and lived it multiple times, the first thing people ask is, well, what do you do about the crime? Right? That is literally the first question. What do you do about the crime? And, you know, I've now gotten to where my answer is, well, what are you doing about the crime now? Because we are immensely over police. And, you know, studies show that police don't resolve crimes, right? Most crimes don't even get reported, much less resolved. And so you have, you know, this continuous circle of problem, which is you have crime, quote unquote, that's happening in an area. And, you know, people are seeking to resolve the issue about whatever is happening in their specific community. And they're not understanding that, you know, the police that already exist are not preventing anything. They're not usually solving anything. And sometimes they are part of the criminal element that's creating the problem within that community. And so, you know, it's something that I'm really striving to get people to understand. And as I, you know, dug into that fell down that rabbit hole, looking at all these cop cities that are being built, and really understanding now, you know, now that I've got that layout done, I'm looking at the funding and where's the money coming from, and how much money is it going to be, and how big is this thing that they're building, and how much land is it taking up, and, you know, who's behind it. And, you know, it is a growing police state. And as Dhoruba calls them, the armed agents of the state. And we're just going to be overrun by these groups of armed agents who don't give a shit about life and don't respect people. And you know, their goal is not to save anybody, right? And so I'm very interested in using these resources. I was so thrilled to tap on that link and to see all the stuff that popped up. you know, because for me, I'm always looking for those resources, and that is going to be major to have access to something like that. And I just cannot believe that he like was so flippant about it. Like, oh yeah, I have this website.
You know how these activist geniuses are. You know, they're so used to it. It's unmoving almost. It's just norm. It's routine.
Right.
You know, but
right.
But that's just because
you just don't read, beloved.
Did you see my text? Did you laugh when you read my text message?
Which text?
The one that I wrote that said, "You got to read, beloved."
Yeah,
my email.
Oh, right. Yeah. Got to read, beloved. Got to read.
All right. So going and I cannot remember for the life of me if you all covered this story on Remix or not, but
we did, but it's okay to bring
it back.
So
just because. So from a personal standpoint, right, as a mother, and imagining being in this situation where I go to the police and I file a report because my child didn't come home and it's been days, and they know full and well what happened to my child, and it takes months for somebody to speak the truth about this situation. And this one hit me. It hit because I was really trying to think, like, what do you do as a parent, right? As a mother, like to live through this, like to have all this time go where you're looking and, you know, because they always say like you have hope, right? Like until you get an answer, you have hope that there's going to be something. And for this to be the result, I am just.
And that it wasn't the first tragedy at the hands of the police, I believe, in the family, if I remember the story correctly, that she had lost. There's others in the family that have at least one other, if I'm not mistaken, that she also lost. So, but yeah, I mean, to file a missing person, it's crazy. So, right. She had previously filed a wrongful death suit against JPD in connection with the death of another family member, her brother George Robinson. That suit is still pending in Hinds County Court. In July, Judge Deborah Gibbs recused herself. Meanwhile, criminal charges against two of the officers involved in Robinson's death were dismissed. Another officer, Anthony Fox, was sentenced to 5 years in prison in August 22 after being found guilty of culpable negligence manslaughter. So, I mean,
so the family's now asking the DOJ to get involved. I think that's the other link that I sent. And Ben Crump's involved, which I'm about sick of him. But
Daruba's favorite lawyer.
I can't, about sick of him. But you know, and it like you can almost set your clock to it, right? Something happens, the police lie about it, the truth gets found out, then, you know, people start talking, and then they want the DOJ, and the whole system is corrupt. The whole system is corrupt. And, you know, Crump is, the unfortunate part about Crump is he's become almost like, you know, the person that you have to get on board, and his idea of justice is the right check amount, right?
Get that reward.
Get that check, right? And make sure he gets his probably 33%, which is the standard.
I think that is
whenever you are, you know, whenever it's a lawsuit and you're suing people. But what, like, how does it doesn't fix the problem, right? Because this is not the only story, right? I mean, in Seattle, they caught I don't know if it was a council person or a police officer ran over a girl crossing the street, and they caught them recorded like laughing about it, right? Yeah. And so this is not even like an atypical story that, there was another police officer who got fined $33. That was the headline. Like the fine was 33 or $35, and I killed a cyclist, right? In his vehicle. So you all told the story about the officer who killed Breonna Taylor, who went flying into a housing unit and crashed the car and pulled his gun. These stories are not unique. And that to me is the part that really blows my mind when these things happen, and people are like, oh, this thing. And I'm like, but this is not a unique story, right? Like this is all the same situation that just kind of circles back over and over again. And it all points back to the fact that these people do not care about life. They don't care about regular working people. They don't care about people with any kind of melanin. They don't respect communities that they work in.
And they don't even much care about the poor whites, if we're being perfectly honest.
Not at all. Right.
So you either have to have either it's low, it's either a lot of melanin or not a lot of money that gets you in trouble, and or a combination of the two.
Right.
I think I said that right. Lots of melanin, no money equal not the same, but similar responses. They don't
don't have too much melanin and no money.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you start having the combination, you start piling up the combinations of poverty and darkness. It's rough. It just gets rough. But I don't even. I mean, and as I've said, I mean, I have a former college buddy who was went into the Baltimore City Police, had a long career, and then they destroyed him. And just a little of what he's told me in the past about what he's seen from the inside, it's worse. Like it's worse than what we even get to report and what we hear about. It's almost like the stories that come out, as bad as they are just the stories that come out.
Right.
And man, at one point I was trying to get him put him with a journalist to get him to tell his story, but they kind of destroyed him first, and I don't know if that's ever going to come out. But yeah, I didn't mean to. I don't know where I was going with that, other than it's just worse. It just gets worse.
I can imagine, and I don't, I try not to be judgmental, right? As like a natural state of mind to not judge others for the decisions they make, because we all are living within this capitalist society. We are all, doing our best to survive. But I cannot for the life of me understand why anybody goes into that profession.
So when we were in college, we had both been in the military before we went to college. So that was one of the ways we bonded. And at the time he also, we got introduced per our last conversation we were having. He cut hair, and I used to have hair to cut. But when he told me when we were getting ready to graduate that he was on his way to do that, I was like, I think you should consider other options. So I at least put in, a small 2 cents to try to get him to reconsider. But his reasoning was that his brother had been abused by the police, and the logic that apparently is more common than I'm aware of was that I'm going to join the police to make them not hurt our people anymore. And he was sincere in that. Now, obviously naive, and looking back now, he's got to, I can't even imagine how, they really did him dirty. But I can't understand the logic. I'm with you is what I'm saying, but that was at least what that was what his explanation was. And I don't know. I don't know how prevalent that is, but it's at least seems from what he's shared with me. I don't pretend to know many more police that would talk to me like this, but it is apparently more prevalent than we would think. This idea that we've seen some sort of abuse, and the response is to join and try to. Now, he didn't tell me that in college, though. I don't remember him telling me that, because I would have. I can't imagine my first thing that the first thing I would have said would not have been, but you were in the Army and I was in the Navy. The idea that either one of us could join those institutions and change them,
right,
is bananas.
Right. There's just no, I mean, I get, but people also run for office because they say they're going to, I guess it's the same thing, right? They're going to change it from the inside.
Yeah,
I guess.
Well, maybe? I don't know, maybe, but at least the mythology with running for office is that once you get elected, you have some authority. When you join the police or the military, you're just at the bottom. Your starting point, even as an officer, your starting point is nowhere. Maybe it is the same. You're a junior congressperson. It's just like being a beat cop or whatever. I don't know, but I'm sure it's equally absurd. You're right, but it just seems more overtly absurd to think I'm going to join the military and go from washing dishes and cleaning toilets to changing the mission of the Navy.
Right.
Like, I'm going to work my way up, and we're going to turn this thing into a righteous vehicle for good.
Right. Nah. And the whole system is corrupt. There's no, yeah. I always like to tell people they're bad apples because the whole tree's rotten. It's not because it's a single apple. It's because the whole tree to the core is rotten.
The ground, the tree is
rotten.
The air water is polluted. All the water, all of that. All of right. This is the toxic mess.
Toxic. Yep. Absolutely.
There was a classic documentary about journalism called Toxic Sludge. And you know what? Now that I mentioned it, in grad school, we were assigned to watch this documentary, which was all about the corporate takeover of mainstream journalism. And it was funny because, so I was having beef with the dean at the time of the journalism school at the University of Maryland. And, and he had tried to get me out of the program. And he was current at the time, the dean of the College of Journalism at College Park, Maryland, where I was in grad school. He had previously worked as an editor for the San Jose Mercury News, or one of those California newspapers. And the topic of one of the stories in Toxic Sludge was how something about car dealers were basically paying for news coverage and content. There was something shady that broke the barrier between advertising and news. That was the point. Mm-hmm. And I remember during I raised my hand and asked, knowing the answer, who at the time, I asked the professor, who at the time was the editor of that newspaper who would have allowed such a travesty to occur? And he had to, I don't know if he knew what I was doing or not. I don't know how well I played it off, but he had to say, well, our current dean was at the time and I said, oh, how fascinating. What a coinky dink.
That's why you always have beef.
Well, no, honestly, I have beef because I'm too left. He said himself, he said, oh my God, we have a socialist. And I actually said, he said, so you're a socialist? Because we were assigned Karl Marx because he's considered a founding father of media studies, oddly enough. So but they wanted to condemn him. And I'm like, no, he had some good points. And they were like, oh, so you're a socialist? And I said, oh no, I'm worse. I remember I did say that to him. I said, "Oh no, I'm worse than that." And he was like, "Uh-oh." And sure enough, they cut my funding without telling me. Long story short, that was another. But yeah. So, but then that little bit happened, and I said, "Oh, interesting."
That is very interesting. That is, though, when you really.
It's shady. It's shady. But it's just like the real world. You have people leave Raytheon to become Secretary of Defense. You have people leave mainstream journalism jobs to go to teach journalism.
Yep.
So they teach the next round of people who are going to do the same shit.
The same stuff. It's just the never-ending circle of horse shit that never works.
All right.
For anybody.
So my bad. I didn't mean to take us down. Speaking of yet another sidetrack, but do we? I know you have a special guest coming for us.
Yes.
Do we want to get to any more of these stories before?
Why don't we could just talk about why I wanted to bring her on. She did send me a note that said she might be able to get on a little bit earlier, so we can have this conversation, and then when she pops on, we can bring her on to give her details. So The link that I sent you two links for this. One is an article that Mahi wrote, and I'll wait until she comes on to introduce and give her background. But the other link is for a tweet thread that is about Sudan.
Oh wait, these are emailed?
No, it's in the
it's in the run sheet.
It's in the run sheet, man.
My bad. I know you're organized. I'm the one that's not. Oh, my bad. Because you got to scroll down.
Yeah, there's a lot. I be trying. You know what? I
scroll.
For the audience, so you all know, I be on this trip with the run sheet, and I just add stuff as I get information, and then we kind of just flow through whatever we can from the run sheet. And
hold up, is this her who wrote this with Horace Campbell?
Yes, it is.
Oh, word! So so you got a big dog coming up in here. I didn't know that.
She is legit. Yeah, man.
You got her coming in writing stuff with Horace Campbell. Googly goo. Well, let me sit up straight. I gotta get stretch out. I was like, I didn't know.
Yeah. So the tweet. I don't know. I guess you can pick. You can look at the article first if you want, or you can look at the tweet first. But the tweet is what made me.
Okay, I'll pull the tweet. Let's start with the tweet. Here's the tweet.
So this thread is what made me bring this to your attention. And so it occurred to me and obviously we have to fight all the battles that we can fight. But I had been coming across a number of different posts, memes, tweets, etc., about what was happening in Sudan. And it really got me to thinking about this imperialist power that we are currently living under, right? And living within the belly of the beast, and how much destruction and chaos it is causing all over the world. And so much so that it is really hard to keep track of all the things. It is really hard to keep track of all the things. And so, if you follow places like BPM and Black Agenda Report and BAP, everything's kind of running simultaneously, right? So they're talking about Haiti, and they're talking about Congo, and they're talking about Niger, and they're talking about Burkina Faso, and they're talking about Sudan. Like, they're talking about all these things. But if you are a regular person who's just trying to get through your day and just trying to pay your bills and eat and stay out of the rain and be warm at night, right? Like, there is no possible way to keep track of all the things. It is impossible. And so I read this tweet, and it really struck me how difficult it was going to be for people who live within, as Claudia calls it, the belly of the beast, to really follow all the destruction and the chaos that is being caused all over the place. So this is the tweet that I don't know if you want to. Did you read? Were you able?
I read the first. I didn't read the whole thread. I mean, the first one says here: 6 months ago today, Sudanese people woke up to the news that war had broken out in Khartoum, and it quickly spread like wildfire across the nation. The capital city of the country has been all but flattened, and the stories coming out of Darfur sound like genocide. News organizations covered the conflict initially, but most and her name is Yasmin Abdel Majid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. News organizations covered the conflict initially, but mostly through the lens of the evacuation of foreign citizens. Once the Westerners were out, the coverage all but ground to a halt. Pitches I would send to big news desks would either be ignored or replied with not only, I'm sorry for your family, but what's the story? Not only have our houses been raided, generational homes and valuables been looted and destroyed. Not only have thousands been killed, women raped, families dispersed, but when it's in Sudan, it's not even considered a story. I spent much of the last week in solidarity with my Palestinian friends because our pain is shared, connected. I feel so clearly the burning, unceasing grief, the way emotions surged underneath my skin to burst through at any moment, the need for every bit of news. Today, I think of Sudan, I think of Palestine, I think of all the folks around the world whose lives cannot be simple or straightforward because of where they were born and the so-called leaders they have been cursed to live under. Ya Rab, protect us from the worst of men. Keep Sudan in your prayers. Please find space for us in the hearts among the waves of horrific news. Wow, there's a lot she's written.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's okay. And you know, what it really got me to really thinking, and this is a conversation that you've had multiple times across when Palestine comes up, is, you know, why are Black people involved, right? Like, why are you talking about this? And if as a person, Black or otherwise, to be, in my personal opinion, like, if you can see what imperialism, what capitalism, what the empire is doing in any one place, you should not be able to ignore what it's doing in other places, right? And I think it's important for people who have a vested interest in ending the empire to be clear that Palestine is only one of many where the empire is the problem, right? It is one of many places where the US is knee-deep in what has caused the situation to occur. It is one of many of places where US is financing the murder of citizens. It is one of many places where, you know, the powers that be have become those powers due to the US support and the pushing of coups to get out leaders that the people wanted, right? And for me, this really stood out because I realized this is what happens, and it's in part because of Western media and because of propaganda and because of all the things. Like, you know, you are basically told what to care about, right? You're told when a story is important enough to pay attention to. You're told when, you know, it's something that you should be watching for or marching about or yelling about or calling your Congress for and all these things. And if you are too busy or unable or unwilling to recognize that these are things that are happening all across the world, right? And the US is the problem, right? The EU is the problem. The UN, which is run by the US and the EU, is the problem, right? It is all these forces that are centralized to ensure that capitalism and greed and the empire and imperialism and all these things remain, you know, keep their stronghold. And then we end up getting so spread apart because I don't want to say we forget, but, you know, I can't think of a better word for it, right? Like, there are not a lot of people who are paying attention to what's happening in Haiti right now, right? Like, it's just not even part of the conversation, right? And I don't want people to mistake this as me saying that we should not be marching for Palestine, right? Because that's not what I'm saying. You have to stand up against injustice and genocide, and you have to do it. But I wanted to make sure that we didn't forget that that is one of multiple places where this is happening. And so Mahi, who hopefully will be joining us, shortly, she is part of my Pan-African, the global Pan-African movement of North America that I'm, also a part of. And she just actually successfully did her dissertation. So she's about to be doctor, which is really...
Now they just got to file the paperwork. You said she defended her dissertation. That's a wrap.
Her dissertation. Yep. And
unless it's like minor revisions or something like that. I remember for mine, I told them they wanted these minor revisions after I successfully defended, and I did it for like a week. I went back and forth a little bit, and then I told the dude, I was like, enough already.
Right.
Like,
right. It's
a wrap.
Leave me alone.
and like I won. You know what I mean? Like, it's a wrap. Like, let's.
Right. Listen. I thought for about 10 seconds about doing a PhD, and then I was like, I don't know about all that. I don't know.
Watching my wife get a law degree, and compared to my particular PhD, it made mine look very easy. Mine was, other than the drama, the workload. I mean, the work was light work. It was easy. I thought, especially going from Africana studies to their. I mean, it was a huge step down, I thought. And I was like, this is not complicated. Let's wrap this up. Give me these letters so I can move on. Like, this is not, y'all are not. I was in rooms I'm reading Horace Campbell. I'm stretched. My mind had been stretched for 2 years in the Africana Studies Center. And then I come over to this joint. I'm like, this is going to be easy. I breezed through that joint.
So the other link I sent you is the article that Mahi co-authored with with Professor Campbell, Dr. Campbell, Malimu, who he's been yelling at me for years to stop calling him Professor Campbell, but I it's hard. It's hard to stop. And we can share this in the show notes, in the show description, so people can read this. And this, so this goes back, quite a few months to when this first started. So after I read that tweet, I immediately remembered that she co-authored this article. And so I called Mahi and I was like, okay, I need you to explain some of this to me so that I'm versed on it. And then I was like, wait a minute, why are you explaining it to me? What are you doing tomorrow? So
now you're thinking we were slowly becoming YouTubers. You started to think content. That's why I'm like, now, man, anybody, like, if you want to talk to me, it's got to be on a live. Like,
right.
You want to have a conversation? I'm not having no regular phone call. You need to make some content. Let's take it to the stage. And speaking of which, our guest is here. If you would like to perform a more formal introduction or not, I will.
Yeah, I can. So, and Mahi, she knows she's going to have to give her full name. I call her Mahi so I don't mess up her name. So Mahi is a political science PhD student enrolled at Syracuse University. She previously earned her master's in Pan-African Studies in 2021. Her research explored the 2019 Sudanese uprising and the fundamental role of women in liberation struggles with radical possibilities. Currently, her research includes African politics, social and women's movements, grassroots mobilization, modes of political organization, and transformational politics. Mahi was born in Ethiopia, lived in Malaysia, She's worked with multiple research institutions in Ethiopia. She spearheaded Lynn County's first expungement and resource clinic in Iowa. And she is currently a fellow board member with me at Global Pan-African Movement, the North American delegation, as well as a member of the Africa Initiative and vice president of the African Graduate Students Network at Syracuse University. So welcome, Mahi.
And
there we go.
Successfully defended the dissertation. Congratulations and welcome.
You. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Ball, for having me, and thank you so much, Renee, for inviting me. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
Either I'm Jared, and you're going to have to help me pronounce your name, or we're going to do Dr. Sarah Berhan.
Okay, I haven't defended my dissertation yet. I'm over the comms.
Oh, I thought you said you successfully defended. I thought that was the news.
No, I defended my comprehensive exams.
Well, congratulations. Okay.
Well, congrats on that.
All right.
My bad, Mahi. I'm giving bad information on the
But my point is, just call me Jared. That was really my point. We don't need to do all of that. So, but congratulations. And all right. Please tell us about your work. I'm fascinated and impressed that you're already publishing with the legendary Dr. Horace Campbell. So you're well on your way. But I can pull up this article again if you want to walk us through it a little bit and tell us, please.
Yeah. So currently, like I think as Renee kind of started us off with, like, I did my master's thesis on the 2019 uprising. I finished up the thesis in 2021. So very much they were in a revolutionary process. And we did not know like where things were going. But essentially when I got into the PhD, I just continued because the revolution in Sudan is nothing like we've seen before, especially in terms of the position of women in the revolution and the kinds of cross-class, cross-identity alliances Sudanese people, working people have been able to build, I think is phenomenal and very much understudied or very much coalesced or like collapsed with the term democracy, which I think they're reinventing democracy in ways that are actually, they're pioneers in many ways, in my opinion, because the forms of participation that emerged during this revolutionary process is really like nothing we've seen and does not compare to like the kind of electoral politics and associated to democracy as we know it, especially in mainstream language. And so we continued that process. And this article really comes out of at a point when on April 15, it's like a counter-revolutionary process when the security apparatus, different branches of the security apparatus went to war with each other. And this really is a result of like the different external forces supporting these different factions. And also it's a result of the inability of the security apparatus to control or constrain what was happening on the ground. Because the way that this resistance, whether it's the resistance committees or like coalitions like the Tea Sellers Associations or the SPA, the Sudanese Professionals Associations, were brought together under a large umbrella, different professional working groups, and how these different groups were working together and kind of building, like they're writing charters, they're talking about how the state is going to look after the revolution. And all of this was really the military or the different factions of the security apparatus were unable to contain any of this. And so I don't know if you guys want me to start off with a little bit about what happened since 2019 and the kind of interruptions, or you want me to follow the format in which that article was published? So which would be better? I mean, if our audience isn't, I would say.
I was going to say, I'd start as if the audience knows nothing. Because I think that's always the best way to start, is to give people the full history.
It would definitely not be true for this audience, but you should assume it anyway.
Right.
Because our audience knows everything, but just in case, our hosts don't always. So.
Okay. So, I mean, Sudan generally has a very long history of organizing, and this stretches back as far back as like fighting Ottoman rule and colonization. And since the 1860s, there's been like different kinds of joint struggles among different groups happening. So their history of resistance, and especially labor organizing since the Gezira scheme, which is what the British kind of, so in Khartoum is where the two Niles meet. The confluence of the Niles is in Khartoum. So as we know, waterways were central to trade routes. Waterways was central to moving raw materials. So Sudan has always had like a geostrategic position and a resource that's very, very important, water. And so there's been an attempt to create, actually the Gezira scheme is one of the largest agricultural schemes in the world under one administration. I don't think any other scheme has even topped that. So they've had that, and under that, you can imagine the kind of strong labor organizations that emerged with such an oppressive scheme that was run by the colonialists, the British, and essentially they used comprador Egyptians also because it was called the Anglo-Egyptian condominium. So since then, and the Muhaddis movement that attempted to remove the Ottoman and the British in that region, we've seen strong movements, working people movements in Sudan. And so especially even after independence, which is 1956, this is the third time, 2019 is the third time the Sudanese people have been able to remove a military regime from power. So first was 1964, you had 1985, and then now you have 2019. So this Sudan also had one of the largest communist parties in the region. Has also had very strong labor movement among women, with the Sudanese Women's Union being one of the largest women's organizations as far back as the 1940s. And so they have that unique history of mobilization. But 2019 was very unique in that the kinds of forces, social forces that came to the forefront were very different. And so protests erupted everywhere. And after 4 months of like coordinated demonstrations since April 2019, Omar al-Bashir was removed from power, and then the military attempted to remain in power. And so this is very on brand for the military attempting to take over once the popular movement has removed the incumbent. And so the streets went on and like held on to the street slogan of no compromise, no negotiation, and I always forget the third no, but basically we don't want anything to do with the military in power. And so that was kind of the movement that led to one of the deadliest days, and the uprising came on June 3rd of 2019. It's also called the Ramadan Massacre because you had a sit-in that was erected in front of the military in front of the military headquarters in Khartoum, the capital city. And the sit-in lasted about 58 days. And it basically, there were centers for women's health. There were centers for different political parties who wanted to convey their agenda to the streets. And so the streets made up, and a lot of people from different cities came to the sit-in just to join it. And this is happening nationally as well. And so that is the first instance that we see the security apparatus is unable to keep up with the revolution and what they're building. And the only way they know how to resort to that is using violence and force. And so that is the Ramadan. Over 200 people were massacred during the sit-in and disbanding of the sit-in. And you would imagine this would kill the revolution, but it did not. It actually led to one of the largest protests a week later. And so the folks organizing these are really, like I mentioned, it's working people. It's different groups like the tea sellers. You have a tea sellers union, Sudan, which was at the time of 2019, 20,000 strong. And so this is also something you don't find. Like in Africa, we don't deal with domestic workers. We don't deal with the super exploited women. But you were seeing like in 2019, like, for example, a lot of the roles of the sit-in were run by women who were part of these unions and part of organizations like youth organizations that ran up to 2013. And so that is the movement that led to basically in October 25, 2021, the military did a coup. And actually the security apparatus right now, what I call the security apparatus, is the war ongoing in Sudan is between the rapid support forces that began as a militia force in Darfur named the Janjaweed. And so there, what became recognized as official border guards then became elevated as a part of, and so that's their history. And the other aspect of the war is by the Sudanese armed forces, which is the military, standing military of Sudan, but has a very colonial history and hasn't even been reformed since its colonial history. And so these are the two forces. But October 21, 2021 is when these forces together like went ahead with the coup, a military coup that removed the civilian aspect of the transitional government that was put in place. And so this is when all-out rejection of the military came, and people resisted. And so I think like last year in 2022, I was in Sudan in the summer of June, and I was there for a little over 30 days. Every day there were street protests. Every day there was some kind of strike happening. Every day there was some kind of movement happening. And it was at a point I even joined some comrades on how, like, just to see how protests are held, and they're fighting with, like, you know, military tanks and trucks, and it's a non-violent movement, but it's a people's movement, and they were basically draining the security apparatus in many ways and unable. And really what happened after the coup is that a lot of external forces who are coming in as the friends of Sudan or the mediators, whether it's the US or the Saudi or the UAEs, right? They're coming in and they're legitimizing the military instead of talking with the people of Sudan who have organized bodies who are capable enough to go talk to the UN and other like transnational bodies. They kept on bringing back the military apparatus to the table. And so in that process is when you have the kind of the security apparatus are it's a class struggle, because each of these different bodies also represent very different groups in the society. And so you're seeing a straining of their relationship because there's an understanding that like none of them can come out stronger out of this. And so that is what eventually leads us to a war in April 15. Yeah, so that is kind of the process. It's where we are right now. It's a counter-revolution, but it's also a class struggle. It's also the security apparatus understanding the aspirations of the revolution did not include them. There's a charter. Part of one of the strongest grassroots movements that emerged during this process is the neighborhood resistance committees. And these resistance committees essentially started in 2013, 2012. And they were like, different committees emerged for different reasons. Some of them emerged because, oh, there are potholes in our neighborhood. We want to fix that. The state isn't doing it. We're going to get together and find a way to do it. And some of them, you know, emerged because of the protest. And the Sudanese Professionals Association in 2019, when they kind of coordinated the different social groups, were like, encouraging the replication. And so I think by the midst of 2021, there was at least like 3,000 registered national resistance committees. And these are grassroots, like neighborhood level groups, young people that came together that are like, we care about this. We have what we have the capabilities to do what we can, and we're going to envision it. And those bodies eventually created like a national, loosely coordinated body that eventually put out a charter. And this is right before the war broke out. They put out a charter. But of course, at the same time, the US and UAE and Saudi are working with the military and different political parties that the streets have rejected to put out an alternative charter that's going to be, and that charter essentially fails. That we see that because the war broke out. But they totally ignore this charter that talks about dismantling the systems of capitalist oppression in Sudan and renewing and creating a whole new kind of society. And they write it out. But essentially, like, right, nobody's listening to these bodies, and the war broke out. So let me just stop there and like maybe I know I'm free to go, but like I want you guys to kind of help clarify, redirect.
Right. And I thank you very that's it's a lot of information, and you know, I'm sure there are people in the audience who know way more than I know, which is why you were my first phone call. So what right now, when you're looking at the conflict and what is happening right now, part of the reason that I called you, and when we talked yesterday, I explained that I feel like there are all these separate things happening all over the world, and people are just not really fully aware of all the different things that are happening. So can you talk about the current state in Sudan? Like, what is happening to the Sudanese people? Like, what is the current status of what's happening there and the effect that it's having on the regular working people and the citizens of the Sudan?
Okay, so essentially war broke out in the capital city. So you can imagine like any capital city, like a full out like armed struggle, like from the militias and the military is breaking out. So the destruction is heavy, like heavy in a sense, like Khartoum has ceased to exist as we used to know it, right? And most of these, when Khartoum was seized, the RSF, the militia forces, were capturing hospitals. They were capturing, because the army is bombing, is carpet bombing. And so the militias, they have ground, they're on the ground. And so their way of cover is going into people's houses, going into these areas that the army is unlikely to bomb. But of course, the army just continues to bomb because none of these forces are necessarily really taking care of the people or fighting on behalf of the people. And so since I had I knew you were going to ask me a question like this. I just pulled out, maybe because everybody knows the UN, everybody knows like the Undersecretary General Martin Griffith. And like, this is a quote for him. He said, "Half a year of war has plunged Sudan into one of the worst humanitarian nightmares in recent history." In the capital city, almost all hospitals have ceased to function at full capacity. There is almost no medicine, and if there is, it's like triple, quadruple the price that it's being sold. The infrastructure is devastated. There's so many videos. It's heartbreaking to see what has been done in just 6 months. There's been an outbreak of cholera that's been reported across Khartoum and different places. The fighting is not just happening in Khartoum, in Darfur. It's been a lot of devastation. And of course, like, all eyes are usually on the capital, and there's patterns of genocidal patterns that could be traced back to the 2000s that are now reemerging because the militias are using ethnicity to mobilize and kind of working on like historical kind of differences to organize people and raid people. And so there's genocidal campaigns happening in Darfur in the West. But in Khartoum, as I said, and rape is common, like what both forces have been accused of using women as weapons of war. And this is like also another statistics from the United Nations, but it's left 25 million, which is more than half of the country because Sudan is considered to be 42 million. 25 million people are said to be in need of aid right now, like currently. And then you have like, I think the migration numbers is like more than 4.5 million were displaced inside of Sudan, whereas 1.2 million have left the country. So yeah, education, like all things as we know it in the capital have ceased in Darfur are horrendous. Just yesterday, I was like paying attention to how some places are being held like sieges by the militias so that they can basically leverage them to access. And just this week, so the different security apparatuses apparently are, once again, they've renewed negotiations in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. But basically the same time we're hearing that they're sitting to discuss, there's an uptick of violence everywhere. And so there's been increased bombing because they're using that to leverage at the negotiation tables. And so I cannot explain to you the amount of devastation, but it is not getting enough coverage. I think over 9,000 people documented to have been killed within 6 months. And I can assure you those are just documented numbers, and we are yet to find out the true casualty number.
When this issue came up on this platform a few months ago, we had a guest who, if I remember correctly, seemed just to be hesitant to point to outside influences and factors manipulating or playing a role in this in any way. But I thought I heard you say a moment ago that there were, to your assessment, this was an actual serious issue. So could you talk from your perspective a little bit more about what those outside influences are and to what extent they are having an impact?
Yes. So, I mean, so you have since the war broke out, and even before the war, right, when there's like a struggle that the military wants political power, but the people are refusing it, you have a lot of people coming in as we are like the Friends of Sudan. So 2019, they call themselves the Friends of Sudan. It consists of Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the Netherlands, Norway, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the UK, the US, the European Union, Italy, and the UAE. So all of these forces.
So you should be good with all those friends.
Yes.
What?
Precisely.
Problem solved.
Precisely. And so these are the different forces pulling and pushing in different ways at the negotiating table. Basically, the streets have completely rejected the military. They said, we want no partnership, no negotiation, no kind of discussions about having any kind of military presence in power, because it's historically, they've seen what's happened, right? Because the military regimes have taken over, said they will eventually transition, and became brutally oppressive. And so there's that rejection. But here you come, Friends of Sudan, completely legitimizing these forces. I mean, they're committing massacres, and they're being it's acceptable that they're going to negotiate. So Sudanese people were being forced to negotiate with people who are killing them daily. And so there is that like legitimation process that these countries have the power and force and the institutions to do. Like, right, the UN like came in on behalf of UNITOMS, like the specific UN mission to Sudan, once again legitimizing the same forces that are doing the oppression. There's an effort like to basically trace and study the corruption in the military and how capital works and the relationship the military has with outside forces. And so you guys, like, it's important to understand the Sudanese military has also been mercenary for a long, long time historically, but even in this current moment, the wars being fought in the wars being fought by Saudi and the UAE and Yemen, a lot of Sudanese people were literally, like, we call it migrant export labor. So it was the Sudanese fighting front. And there's so many horrendous stories about how they were being used as cannon fodder. They weren't being paid for these things, but that's what's been happening, right? And so organizations like the Rapid Support Forces have also been able to kind of create their own channels of relations with countries like the UAE and Saudi, because they're like exporting militia forces to these countries. And so there's an interest from different factions to keep these, and also important to know that these militia forces used to control much of the gold mines in Darfur. And so you also know, like, whether it's stories of like, oh, Wagner is in in Darfur, it's true, that is happening. But Blackwater was also in Darfur in 2000, illegally. They have cases against them too. And so you're looking at, like, this country has had oil before the secession of South Sudan. This country has had gold, like gold in pounds is like being mined from this country. And this country has gum arabic. France is the largest producer of gum arabic. Like, clearly they have no gum arabic trees. Like, Sudan is the largest actual container of gum arabic. And so there are many interests and there are many links, like, and there's enough information out there linking even specific US companies that do business with the military companies. And in that, they're basically financing them. And you have things like, for example, the European Union donated money because it didn't want Africans to come to its borders. And that money went to the Rapid Support Forces, because they became border guards. And so these guys were paid to keep Africans contained in that place. And so all of this, like, despite, like, maybe we will never find the link of like, the US gave but indirectly it's happening. The Sudanese people would have taken care of Bashir, his regime. The fact that there's the military is still around, the fact that they're still legitimate in the eyes of the world, it has everything to do with external forces and very little to do with internal forces. Of course, there are internal forces that back each side. I cannot like refuse that, but they are very, very minor considering the majority who has created organizations and systems and structures to fight what they've been able to do. So yeah. It's like utter bullshit that the external powers did not have an influence. And actually, we would never have had, if they had accepted the charter that the people built, and they attempted, if these Friends of Sudan put their power behind this charter, the charter has a strict outline of what is next, right? Like, what can come next? What kind of bodies do we need to form? How are these bodies going to function? How can they be democratic? How can they be represented? There is a whole 50-page charter out there. But they refused to do that. In fact, what they did is fund and support and amplify an alternative charter that we knew was going to fail from the start.
And in the end, as always, it's about refusing to give the power to the people on the ground, who would then have the audacity to utilize their own resources and to work together to build their communities and to build their spaces and to actually use the resources that are available within that country to build their own things, right? To fix their own streets and to create their own exports. And it's always about trying to maintain the power and the money from outside of that country and failing to allow the people within that country to have any kind of self-determination and the ability to self-sustain.
100%. 100%. And Sudan borders 9 different African countries, right? Like, now that South Sudan has its independence in 2011. 9 countries. If you have a revolutionary movement that is saying we want to transform our economy, we want to transform the way we do governance and politics, that is a huge threat. Sudan borders like Ethiopia, the second largest country in Africa. That is a huge threat. It borders Eritrea, one of the most, like, in structure at least, anti-imperialist countries. And so there is a lot of like threat, like, to not only the regime but to world structure, because they kind of, even if you look through the charter and what they wrote, or if you look through the slogans on the streets, there's a clear like refusal. They want to basically Sudan for the Sudanese. Everything we produce must first feed us. Everything that we do, healthcare, education, must first go to our people. And they're not against like relations with the West or any other country, but it is that they know there's a huge disarticulation. How can it be like it has one of the most fertile lands in the continent, and it has people starving? Like, that's a huge like what? And so people, that consciousness was like across the board. You had tea sellers unionizing to say, we know what we deserve, we know what we produce in the society. That's a huge threat to the region, to Africa, to consciousness among young people. You have young people refuse. I remember, like, because one of the things while during the sit-in is that Saudi and the UAE were like, we're going to give 300 million to the transitional government, which the military was part of. Like, we want to support them and stuff. And at the sitting, chants were like, we don't want your money. We would rather eat falafel. We would rather starve. They kept saying, we want, like, it's not that, like, even, like, they were being, like, conspicuous, they were being nervous about extra, but they're saying, no, we know what we want. We want to do it on our own terms. We want nobody to intervene. And that included even the AU. They wanted nobody to intervene because they had a very clear movement that was also very organized. And so, this is definitely has to do with the kind of repercussions a revolutionary movement like this has. And Egypt and Sudan have a long history. They don't just border each other, but they have a long history of camaraderie. And so we can imagine what a revolutionary movement in Sudan can do to resuscitate the revolutionary movement in Egypt, which would be the end of imperialism in Africa to a large extent.
So as we unfortunately have to get ready to wrap up here, I did just want to invite you to conclude with the way your article with Professor Campbell concludes. You both say something to the effect that both sides are prepared to fight to one another to the death, and that the solution is in some sort of trick bag, if I may say, between Russia on one hand, Egypt on another, and then you have a statement here where you're saying progressives internationally must transcend the propaganda war of the bourgeois forces who are quaking at the prospect of this counter-revolution ensnaring millions of Egyptians who can take courage from Sudan in their leaders, if their leaders continue in the alliance with Israel against the Palestinian people. I know I've invited a lot there just in the way you all conclude, and we've skipped a number of steps, but if you could speak to where you see the Sudanese people sort of caught between and what you would like to see the world do in response in solidarity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess like that conclusion really it's us attempting to tie in the Abraham Accords and the attempt to legitimize and normalize ties with Israel. And Sudan had actually been one of the signatories, to which the street, of course, protested against. But it's to show that the imperial forces are aligned. There are forces that we can identify as the enemies of the people, including the regime in Egypt. And it's so I guess where we're leading up to is that the Sudanese revolution, another layer of why it is so important is because it's against religious fundamentalism. And so the Sudanese people, a majority Muslim country, they do not want religious fundamentalism. They do not want Sharia law as a way of governing the law. And so that kind of consciousness, what they're prioritizing above everything is not a section of the society, but all of the society. And so that is a huge threat that then can activate the Egyptian youth and the Egyptian people, the largest population on the continent, that can possibly, if there's a revolution there, basically change the relations of Palestine, Rafah border, all of that, the order that basically allows what the Zionist entity right now to do what it's doing will be completely challenged. And so we are looking at how the world can be transformed if we are all in support of the Sudanese revolution, or at least the most progressive elements of the Sudanese revolution, which have been clear.
Right on. Well, Renee, I don't appreciate you bringing these kind of reprobates and backwards thinkers around these parts. But, you know,
in these YouTube streets.
In these YouTube streets.
These YouTube streets.
You know,
listen, Mahi is. I so appreciate that you made the time, and at the last minute with me calling you on the night before, like, what you doing tomorrow? But I felt like we needed a voice of someone who was fully versed on what was happening to bring the full story to the forefront and to get, you know, I said it before you came on, like this idea of the empire and imperialism and how many threads and fingers it is spread so far and so wide. And while people are focused on one thing, I think we're really missing that if all of these forces really, if you really stop and look at what's happening, it's the same group, right? It's the same people that are poking holes all over the world and creating this type of confusion. And once people are very clear on what the problem is, then you can deal with the problem. But right now, people they misunderstand what the problem is. They don't understand that it's imperialism, that it's empire, it's capitalism. They're missing that core thing. And I so appreciate that you jumped on. Thank you very much.
Thank you
yes,
so
indeed.
much.
Thank you very much. And good luck going forward. Congratulations on this last step. Good luck on the next one. And please come back quickly.
And I'm always here.
Thanks, Mahi.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Soon. Peace. Take care. Okay. Right on. That was very dope.
Look at me bringing it. Look at me bringing the good stuff.
Go ahead, Renee. Oh. So listen, I don't want to get in trouble with Warrior Class. I think we did a really good job following your even with my technical errors. We reformed and finished very strong. I don't want to tempt fate and ruin it. So any final thoughts from you before we get out of here?
No, I'm gonna let you end with what you always end with. On Saturday, I'll stay in the chat so people, you know, as we get to this part, they'll know that I've been in there trying to keep up with the chat while we go. You're gonna be busy, so I'm gonna hold to the task of being with the people while you go big time.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah. So anyway, thank you very much, Renee. Thanks to Sister Mahi. Is that what you were saying? Mahi. Mm-hmm. And shout out to Dr. Campbell, to the remixers. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Peace if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And we will catch you next time here on Saturdays with Renee. Saturday.